Okay, this should be the last video on the intro to variables, and this is what we did on day 4 of week 4 in class. And so we're going to be on page 4 of our chapter 2 notes. So if you remember, the previous assignment took you through this concatenation exercise. So how to determine what variables are needed in a program. So you're sitting there, you have a program to write. How do you decide, well, what variables do I need to declare? And so basically what you do is you look at each piece of data that will be used in a program during should be stored in a variable. So you're trying to figure out what types of data are going to be used in this program. For example, in the Chapter 2-1 assignment, some students used a variable to store the area of a basketball court. However, the purpose of the program was to display the dimensions, not the area. So only 2 variables were needed, one to store the length and one to store the width. And so if we just look at those examples, we needed the length and we needed the width, because what we were going to do is we wanted to print that a high school basketball court is 84 feet long and 50 feet wide. So that's all we needed. Now, if we were dealing with, let's say, areas, or not areas, but let's say we were talking about dimensions of different types of athletic courts, then maybe we might need one that's says if it's a basketball court or if it's a badminton court. So we could have another variable called something like court 1 or something like that would be basketball, court 2 would be badminton, court 3 would be volleyball, and that would be an important situation in that case. Another place to look is at when we first started variables, we talked about a customer order, a latte order, and so we found that because we wanted to calculate a latte order, the pieces of data that you need in the program is you need the number of lattes, so that means that we need a variable for that. You need to, in order to calculate the cost of the order, you have to know what the cost is per latte, so that therefore there's a second thing that you need. And then of course the purpose of the program is to calculate the cost of the order, so there's another piece of data that you would obviously use in the program. And if you look at the purpose of the program, that's going to give you some clues as to some of the variables that you need. And then if you look at what the output's supposed to look like, what do we want to do in the output? What's supposed to display on the screen for the user? And so we can see that we have Sally Sue is the customer name, and so that's why we have the customer name as one of the variables, because we need to display it. And then and as we already discussed, we have the 5 and we have the 1750. All right, so those are things you got to look at as far as how to decide what variables are needed to store data in the program. Number 11, variables are declared, and they are actually, this is all in the correct order. They're declared, they're assigned, and then they're called. So declared, assigned, and called. Now another way to say that is you could say they're defined, initialized, and used. Those all mean the same thing. Defined means declared, initialized means it's assigned at the time of declaration, and then used is another word for being called. So a variable must be declared before it can be assigned. Alright, so it must be declared before it can be assigned and called. Otherwise you're going to get an error message. And so if you want to follow along, that'd be good. Otherwise just look at this. We said it has to be declared before it can be assigned. Well, let's just take this line 16 here, and let's what makes it a declaration is the fact that it's saying what the data type is and the name. So if we take away the data type, Now it becomes just an assignment. So we're trying to assign a variable, as you can see, is not declared anywhere. Well, let's see what the compiler says. Alright, so the compiler says it cannot find symbol down here for length. So it's looking at length and it's trying to find it, and it can't find it. So now again, if you remember, we talked about this before, is that when you have a declaration, so before we do that, let's do this. Let's back up. Remember that when we talked about when it says, when we have a declaration, it says int length, that means what happens is the compiler will, in the computer memory, take one of those locations that are already there numbered, so they already have numbers to them, you know, something like this, let's say. They take that location and they reserve it for as the name length, because that's what you as the programmer have written in that declaration. So its name is length and it handles ints. And then in this case what it does is it stores, this particular one will store the 84 inside the memory location. This is in your computer memory. Now let's just say that we don't have a memory location called length, and so we just say right off the bat length is assigned 84. Well, the compiler is going to look in the computer memory area, which we can just for sake, we can just say this is all the computer memory locations, all the locations are in here, and it's looking for something called length. Well, it never finds it because length has never been declared. And so it says I cannot find symbol, can't find that variable name anywhere. Alright, so that's what happens. And so, whoops, let's go back to here. So the error message is cannot find symbol. Alright, so if a variable, if you try to define or to assign a variable that hasn't been declared, you will get an error message that says it can't find it. Can't find that variable. A variable, the next thing in here, number 11, is a variable must be assigned or initialized before it can be used. It must be assigned or initialized before it can be called. That called is what goes inside this blank. Now we have done this before. We'll just go through it really quick again. Here is a variable that is declared, and let's just say it's not assigned anything. So you have a memory location over here. It's called length, and it stores ints, but there is nothing in it. And so what happens is in this print statement down here it says a high school basketball court is plus length. So here's the variable call. The variable call, it's calling this memory location. The compiler finds it because it's been declared. So it finds the symbol, finds length, and it says what is your value. There is no value in here. It's called a garbage value. And so that is why it then will give you another message. And so what does that message say? So we're gonna go ahead and compile here, and it says variable length might not have been initialized. Okay, just to simplify this, you can just say that the variable has not been initialized. The storage location, whatever, it has not been initialized. And initialized, if you remember, means assigned. So the variable has not been assigned. That's why you can't call it. Alright, let's see, let's get rid of this. Alright, so this down here, then you could write the variable has not been initialized is the basic error message. Okay, finally, when the compiler says it can't find symbol, it usually means one of the following. And so the biggest thing when you see this message is look for spelling and capitalization. That's one of the most common issues. So the spelling or capitalization of a variable in a variable call doesn't match its spelling or capitalization when it was declared. And just a quick, because we've done this before, but this is just a quick reminder. Let's say that we have a variable length that's been declared and it's been assigned as 84. Now you want to call it. Well, that's all fine and good. So if we capitalize it, so now what we're going to get an error that it's going to say it cannot find symbol. All right, because this is capitalized. The variable call is capitalized, but in the declaration it is not. All right, so that's not going to work. And as we said before, length, let's say we misspell it, and then we'll see is that the spelling for length doesn't match the spelling of the declaration, therefore it says it cannot find symbol. Right? Then spelling or capitalization of other Java objects is incorrect. Spelling or capitalization of other Java objects could be incorrect. And so in here, let's bring everything back to normal and clear this. Now here's an object. The out is an object in the system class, and this is, of course, is a special word. And so we're going to misspell it, OT, capitalize it. Now, so the compiler is going to go, we can't find that out object. There's no such thing as an OT object. It doesn't work. So it doesn't like that. And so that's what's happening here. The variable in a variable call. The variable in a variable call has not been declared yet. The variable in a variable call has not been declared yet. And we already demonstrated that up here, where it's got to be declared before it can be assigned or called. Alright, so we'll not be able to find the symbol. And then the last one is that the import statement. The import statement of a class required import has been left out. So let's look at that really quick and then we'll be done. Oops. So I put this import statement in here before, and let's just comment it out. We didn't really need it because we weren't using G-option pane, but let's make sure it's out, and then I'm just going to change this to the J-option pane show message dialog box, which we have done before. And just a reminder, inside the parentheses is the argument of the show message dialog method. And so when you have if you have more than one argument, you separate it by commas, which this is. So the first argument is null, and the second argument is like is the concatenation, like you would have in a print statement. And so what we do here is we say, okay, we do a compile, and it says it cannot find symbol, and is pointing to J-option pane show message dialog. So it can't find it because there's no import statement. It hasn't imported the class, so you can't use objects from that class. And so we'll just really quick here, we'll just put this import statement back in. So here's the importation of this J-option pane class, and then we recompile it, and everything's fine because the import statement's there. Alright, so that is it for the introduction to variables in Java.